Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Clark. I'm President and CEO of Economic Alliance Snohomish County, and I would like to welcome everyone to the Business Resiliency Forum. We have an amazing, jam-packed morning for you all to engage and come together to learn important information and valuable resources that we have with our partners. Economic Alliance is here to support businesses first and foremost, and we have SBDC, PTAC, SBTRC, and Economic Alliance also has Snohomish STEM Network. This is an event that is in partnership with the STEM team, and we are hopeful that you all realize that STEM connects businesses and educators to create opportunities. With that in mind, I'd love the opportunity to share with you our amazing sponsors for this event. First and foremost, Business Health Trust, Community Transit, and last but not least, Edmonds College. So we thank our sponsors. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Executive Dave Summers for opening remarks. Executive Summers, take it away. We have David.
There we go. There we go. I was blocked from unmuting. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay? Good. Thank you. Good morning. Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you all this morning in this Business Resiliency Forum. And, you know, Economic Alliance and the Snohomish STEM Network convening this forum is really one of the most important things we've learned over the last 2 years going through the pandemic, and that's the need to build resiliency. It's so important for businesses and for the future of the county. So if you think back on our future, we've had Native peoples living here for 14,000 years off the land. We have an amazing history of the timber industry and mines and railroads and smelters, and a long line of businesses that were really built on a foundation of sort of grit and determination and partnerships and innovation. So it's really part of our culture and our history here. And we really need to use those values of grit, determination, partnership, and innovation to guide us as we go forward. So, you know, our county team at Snohomish County is really focused on 3 core priorities in our recovery efforts. And those are building public health, community support, and economic and workforce recovery. So that's an essential part of our focus in looking forward to recovery. And I know that that is the focus of many businesses, and workforce is on top of your minds for many businesses and for the county and for all our employers. We've all been affected by the workforce shortage. So, you know, whether it's the reduced hours at restaurants or lack of skilled workers in manufacturing companies, the reasons behind the shortage are complicated. Solutions to the problems not be quick and easy, but it's essential we focus on that task. So the Future Workforce Alliance, which serves as the local workforce board for Snohomish County, is nearing completion of a strategic plan to transform our workforce system so that it's responsive to the needs of employers and workers, and also creates a system for economic recovery and long-term growth. So that's been a center of our focus through the Future Workforce Alliance. The strategy that they're developing is really threefold, based on equity, partnership, and accountability. We really have to ensure that equity and inclusion inform all aspects of the development and implementation of the workforce system so that we can really reach out to the people and communities farthest from opportunity to receive training, education, and support for sustainable wages and career opportunities, and to provide amazing, to use Gary's word, it's amazing employees for our businesses and provide that workforce we need. So we also know none of us can do this work alone. We really have to increase our partnerships across the workforce system to bring together employers, training providers, economic development and workforce organizations, and community organizations really bring them together to determine the needs of businesses and workers and to coordinate programs to support economic opportunity. And finally, we have to ensure accountability to our community by using data to drive decision-making and support continuous improvement and performance measurement. As a former fish biologist, I love data, and I think data needs to guide us. We need to be monitoring our progress. We need to make sure we get it right, that we're putting our efforts together in the right place to really address our resiliency challenge. So we know Snohomish County has some of the most skilled workers in the world. It's why we're leaders in aerospace and manufacturing. It makes us an attractive place for businesses to do business. And that's essential that we continue that. So ensuring workforce training and our recovery plan will really position us to continue to lead and emerge from the pandemic stronger than before. So as you talk today and gather and discuss business resiliency, I really hope you'll consider Snohomish County your partner in this work. We're here to support you. It's a high priority of mine that county government and local government support our business community in any way we can. So again, thanks to the Economic Alliance, STEM Network, all our partners for convening the forum today. And I just know you're going to have a productive day. And I just want to thank you and know that we're here to help you in this work ahead. So Angie, I'll turn it over to you, I believe.
Thank you, Executive Summers, for your warm welcome and the countless ways that you and your staff have bridged access to the resources around us and all the organizations you listed, and for your dedication in getting all of us back to work and encouraging us to be innovative in the workplace, in our community, and our new normal. The next presentation, followed by panel conversation, is intended to deepen our collective understanding of current workforce need and our future talent needs, both private and public sectors, to thrive in our local and regional economies. The Snohomish STEM Network, in partnership with EASC, serves business and education in identifying efficient, equitable, and meaningful career exploration, skill development, and credential attainment pathways. By building programs in partnership to deliver these opportunities, we also leverage many of our community partners that Executive Summers mentioned, and programs trusted in these communities that haven't historically had access to learn about and pursue these rewarding careers. As a result, expanding the number of young adults and professionals pursuing these skills and training to fuel our local economy with talent, while enriching our culture of access and opportunity. There's really nothing like partnering with business and community to inspire our future residents. It's fun work. It's community work. Washington STEM has been a foundational partner to the STEM Network and 10 other networks in Washington State, serving as a nexus in sharing and scaling talent development best practices, providing meaningful data that informs smart, scalable solutions that lead us to removing barriers and creating equitable access for historically underserved students and for all students, who become the leaders, the critical thinkers, and the creators that will tackle the biggest challenges facing our region, state, nation, and world. I'm delighted to introduce to you Dr. Janae Myers-Twitchell, who serves as the Chief Impact Officer at Washington STEM. And she's adjunct for the University of Washington's College of Education's Leadership and Higher Education program. Specific to today's event, she has developed tools for regionalization of supply-demand gaps for education to workforce pathways across Washington State. Janae, thank you for your research, your passion for students and young professional access and success, your long-standing partnership, and being here with us today to enrich our understanding of the opportunity that exists. Everyone in attendance, we anticipate you might have questions during the presentation, so please don't be shy about dropping your questions into chat in the moment, and we'll have some time following the presentation to respond. Janae, over to you.
Thank you so much, Angie. So good to see you all this morning. Happy Wednesday. Really excited to be here. Thanks again for having me. So to the points made earlier, both in terms of what the executive was saying and what Angie was saying, we're going to be grounding ourselves in data and making sure that we understand what the need is and what the talent supply is, so that we can dig in, create partnerships, and better support the regions really bustling business in this new normal. So at Washington STEM, we're a statewide education nonprofit. We leverage STEM for social change. STEM is not the end all be all for every single student or every single human, but it's what drives our economy, and it's what's most likely, just statistically, to interrupt cycles of poverty and to ensure prosperity for everybody in the region. And that's just true because we have the most STEM jobs per capita of all 50 states, and they're concentrated in the north end of Seattle and Snohomish. We're really the hub of the entire United States in terms of STEM jobs, and you'll see some of that later. At Washington STEM, we work to remove barriers to credential attainment because the vast majority of these jobs require some sort of credential beyond high school. And we work with the STEM networks like Snohomish STEM to help create pathways to long-term economic security, especially for students who are systemically underserved. We work in partnership with the STEM networks like Snohomish STEM to convene and partner at events just like this so that we can make sure that alongside business and education and community leaders, we're identifying some of the best practices and scaling some of the best solutions. And today we'll talk about some of those solutions, like creating career-connected learning opportunities for the talent in your region so that you can make sure that that supply of talent is getting right to your doorstep. We also provide direct support through data, like the data we're going to talk about today, measurement tools, and targeted financial investments. And then we listen to what you have to say, especially through Angie and her team, and advocate for change. So if you let us know that there's something blocking you from being able to do the kind of work that you want to do, to have the kind of talent that you really want to have from our region, we will make sure that we take that to Olympia and make the change needed to make it easier for us to be able to serve our students and to serve our economy. So let's ground ourselves in sort of the global understanding of what we knew about 5 years ago, which is that there was a big study that came out. Many of you might have heard that we had 740,000 job openings in Washington state that would be projected to be open between 2016 and 2020, or 2021, sorry. And we did in fact see that happen. We still have almost the exact number of job openings. We are certainly increasing talent, but we've definitely backtracked because of the pandemic and the Great Resignation, and then a number of things that we're seeing with talent across our state and really across the region or across the nation. What we did with that study is we said, okay, but what does that look like at the local level? Not all of those job openings are created equal. Some of those job openings don't even pay a living wage, let alone a family sustaining wage. And so we said, okay, let's look at the job openings that are entry level. So those that are re-entering the workforce at an older age or skilling up to get a new job that'll pay a living wage, or for that young talent who's coming out of high school or an early credential. And we said, okay, for those entry level jobs that pay equitable wages, what does that look like across the state? And what that looks like now in the next 5 years is about 385,000 entry-level jobs that'll pay a self-sufficiency wage, meaning that you can be a single adult and not be on government subsidies and be able to make a wage to survive. And of those, about 150,000 jobs will be family sustaining, meaning that you can have 1 to 2 dependents and be able to live and not be on government subsidies. And have a meaningful life and likely interrupt cycles of poverty. So that's what it's looking like across the state. And then we took that and said, but what does that really look like at the regional and county levels? And we worked with the Employment Security Department and the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, the K-12 schools, higher education, to pull this all together in terms of our job openings. And when we look specifically in the Snohomish County region, we know that of all those jobs, a little under 20,000 jobs in the region are entry level and pay a family wage. And again, this is for folks that they don't need to have management experience. They can enter into those jobs with having a credential but they don't have to have work experience. So this can be for folks who are changing jobs. This can be for folks who are just entering the workforce for the first time after getting a necessary credential. But this is how many, a little under 20,000 pay a family sustaining wage in the region. And what we know of those jobs that pay a family sustaining wage, nearly 80% of them require a credential after high school. That's among the highest of our state and of our nation in terms of a region that requires that many folks out of high school, or if they're skilling up, to have a credential. We also know that of all of those jobs, 50% require STEM or some sort of STEM literacy. And then in a second, I'm going to talk about the number that was at the bottom, this 25%. But let's hold off on that for now. And let's go to the South for a second and talk a little bit about what's over the border. Many of the businesses in this region share talent with King County. So this is what it looks like when you add in King County. Just over the county border, there are nearly 120,000 jobs that pay a family sustaining wage in the region. And almost 90% of those require a credential, those that pay a family wage and are entry level. And 67% of those jobs are in STEM or require some kind of STEM literacy. So this region, again, is just saturated with jobs that pay really, really decent wages. And those jobs require some sort of credential after high school and require it nearly half or more of the time to be in STEM. And then if you look just to the north for those neighbors who travel just up a little bit across the border of Snohomish up into Northwest Washington, there are a number of folks who might travel up into Bellingham or just up a little bit north to find jobs. You're going to see very similar data from that region as well. There are about 11,000 jobs up there that pay family sustaining wage. 78% require credential, and a little under half require something in STEM or some sort of STEM literacy. And what does this look like if you compare, what does Snohomish look like? Oh yeah, thanks Angie for pointing that out. I should mention that credential means not just a degree that you typically would think of, like a 2-year or 4-year degree. That includes industry recognized certificates, 1-year certificates, 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, and apprenticeships. So that's anything that's after high school. We're not just talking about college. And so what does this look like if you compare Snohomish to the rest of the Puget Sound? What this really basically means is that Snohomish is on par with the rest of the Puget Sound region for the percent of jobs that pay a family sustaining wage, and is higher than average in those jobs requiring some sort of STEM literacy. You look at the whole Puget Sound region, about 52% of the jobs require STEM literacy. It's closer to 60% in Snohomish with our updated numbers. And how does this look compared to the nation? As I was saying at the top of these slides, Snohomish specifically has higher than average state wages in almost every job category. It has slightly higher than average percent of jobs in the state that require a credential, and much, much higher demand for STEM and STEM literate employees compared to across the state. It's also the #1 county to live in to have access to STEM jobs and affordable housing at the same time. I keep calling it the county to live in because I frankly know that many of my friends and cohort have moved into the Snohomish County region for jobs, for great housing. They can live close to the water, et cetera, and it's the place to live. So it's a hot commodity in our state and really in our country. Compared nationally, it's the top metropolitan suburb for high demand jobs and STEM jobs. And it has just experienced astronomical growth and potential compared nationally. However, the unfortunate thing is that, like much of the rest of the state, investment in local talent is really key. And so we have this growth, but we have to end up importing so many of our folks from out of state or out of country, because the local K-12 students that are coming out of high school And the local folks that want to be re-skilled and retrained are just not getting the kind of support that they need. And we'll talk a little bit about exactly what those numbers are in a second. So to understand what the jobs are in each region, we worked really diligently with the Employment Security Department to take their jobs projections and to visualize them. So anytime you're ever interested, you can head over to our website at washingtonstem.org and look at our labor market data dashboard. And then you can select from the top the region you're interested in, including Snohomish, and it'll bring up the kinds of job openings that are projected on an annual basis and show you exactly what those job occupation groups are. When you click on that, you can select which specific jobs you want to look at. In each occupation group, it'll take you over to a jobs page, individual occupation page, and it'll tell you what on average the kind of individual who wants to get that job will have to have credential wise in order to get that job. What it doesn't show you is it's not trying to say that this is the credential expected by the employer or this is the minimum credential. It's going to tell you what is the average credential held by somebody in that job, which is a much better way of knowing whether you're going to get that job. So if the minimum is, associate's degree, but the vast majority of folks have a bachelor's degree, it'll tell you whether that is the job that requires a bachelor's degree on average among most of its workers. Thanks, Angie. And what this looks like specifically in Snohomish, this will be no surprise to most folks here. If you don't include turnover jobs where somebody in the exact same job is going to take another job, but these are true openings, meaning like brand new positions, folks have retired or exited the workforce. Right now, what we're looking at among some of the top jobs, these are not all the top jobs, but among some of the top jobs, we of course have advanced manufacturing jobs that are open. Construction trades is really booming and coming back. Information technology, IT, healthcare professionals like registered nurses and medical assistants, and K-12 teachers. These are all jobs that pay well over a family sustaining wage, and they all actually require some sort of post-secondary credential. That could be a certificate, it could be a bachelor's degree, it could be an apprenticeship, but they all pay well and there's a good number of openings. And they also are experiencing relatively low unemployment rates, even during and after the pandemic crisis. Of course, construction trades shut down briefly, well, not that briefly, but somewhat briefly, but is really coming back strong. And this is what it's looking like to the south in King County. These are the top jobs that have huge numbers of openings. So software developers, of course, no surprise, industrial engineers, healthcare professionals, that's really one in every region that we need lots of, and then healthcare technologists and technicians. Now let's go back to that number that I said I'd get back to, which is the talent supply. So currently we're projecting that given the supply of students that come out of K-12 in the region, out of the K-12 public schools, only about 25% of the jobs that are open that pay a family sustaining wage and are entry level, which means they'll be available to that local K-12 talent, will be able to be filled by that local K-12 talent. It means the rest will have to be imported or potentially upskilled among older workers. Let's break that down just a little bit more. The same is true down in King County, except for it's even less. Even fewer of the jobs down in King County will be able to be filled by local talent. Only about 12% of the jobs that pay a family sustaining wage will be able to be filled by local K-12 talent. The rest will have to be upskilled among local adults, which again, will actually not even fulfill 10 to 20% more if we were to upskill every adult worker who needed to be upskilled. And we would have to import a lot of that talent. So we need to be focusing on both upskilling our adult workers and supporting our youth, our folks who are coming out of high school, because that's really our biggest supply of talent. And right now, if you are a Washington state resident looking for a high demand family wage job, you're actually among the least likely group to get one of those jobs because we have some of the lowest post-secondary enrollment rates of all 50 states and some of the lowest use of financial aid of all 50 states, despite the fact that we have some of the best financial aid opportunities for students to get free or nearly free higher education or apprenticeships or certificates. And so investment in that talent and telling students that they have a place in our local jobs and our local employers is really the way that we need to go and the way that we need to invest to stay relevant and to keep our economy booming. Let's break that down even further. So in Snohomish County specifically, if you look at the local public K-12 high schools, in every high school graduating class, so the group of seniors every year across all of Snohomish County, there's a little under 10,000. There's about 9,500 students who are seniors about to graduate from high school every year. And our data has shown that about 4,000 of them, are on track to earn one of those post-secondary credentials. Again, that include a 2-year, a 4-year, a certificate, or an apprenticeship. And as you'll recall, there were a little under 20,000 entry-level, well-paying jobs open each year. So that's where we get this 25% number. If you take the senior class and then the credentials, this is what is going on with the talent in this region. I'm sorry, some of these numbers are actually a little off down here. I'll adjust those when I resend out the slides. But it's 9,500 in each cohort and about 4,000 credentialed. I think this 5,700 is wrong. Sorry about that. I'll change that. And what that looks like and what that means for the region is that over time, as we support further and further high school classes, graduating classes to get credentials, by the time we are supporting the high school class of 2030, in Snohomish, we need to be aiming for 72% at least of that high school graduating class earning a credential beyond high school. I'm just looking at the chat really quick of these great questions that are coming in. Right now, like I said, we're at about 42% of the high school class earning a credential or on track to earn a credential. And you'll see that on the bottom, the light orange is if we do nothing. The dark orange is what we need to do in the next 8 to 10 years to support the high school class of 2030 to ensure that they're on track to earn a credential. It doesn't mean that they have to get a credential immediately after high school, although we do know from research that the sooner you get a credential after high school, the more likely you're to finish that credential. The longer you wait to go back to get a credential, the least likely you will go back to get that credential. So the sooner we support high school students in understanding that they're wanted and ready to go into the workforce and that they have a job there and can see themselves there, the better off we are. And this is where one of the biggest initiatives we've launched in Washington comes in. CareerConnect Washington. Many of you have heard about CareerConnect Washington. If you have other questions after I talk this through, Angie is the one to connect to. And then her counterpart, Sinead, who's our CSAIL coordinator in this region, they both can talk to you about how to put together programs, how to connect as a business. But the point of CareerConnect Washington is to connect government supports and government agencies with industry and to lead to better education for K-12 students and leading to some form of higher education. The vision of CareerConnect Washington is that every young adult in Washington will have multiple pathways to self-sufficiency and fulfillment, and that we strengthen a comprehensive system for career-connected learning. In order to do that, we're focusing specifically on students of color, Indigenous students, low-income students, rural students, and students with disabilities. And we're focusing in especially on the fact that Black and Indigenous students have experienced systemic racism. And so we're trying to root that out in all of the systems that we're building through CCW. CCW is built on an infrastructure of 3 types of experiences These are not necessarily new to any of you. They might even seem like just something that should naturally happen in a student's progression through their education. But what we're doing is just naming them and making sure and measuring to see if students are getting these experiences. And then we're investing systematically in the types of programs and employers who can offer these experiences to students as young as possible, all the way through until they graduate from high school, so that they end up in a program or in a higher education degree that'll lead them to the jobs in the region. So these 3 steps are Career Explore, which means a student is exposed early on, hopefully by the end of elementary school or sometime in middle school, to careers and career opportunities. These are things like career fairs, worksite tours, those kinds of things. And then Career Prep, which is career-specific instruction at a worksite or in a classroom. This can be something like bringing in an engineer into a science classroom and doing some hands-on learning that is based in a real-world need that the engineer deals with on a daily basis. It can be something like a career and technical education course that gives students hands-on learning, and a series of courses that lead to multiple credits for a student to get exposure. And then Career Launch. Career Launch includes our already important and robust apprenticeship system, and adds to that system other programs that are endorsed by businesses that say, as a business, I'm going to offer a paid work experience, and it's going to complement some instruction that a student gets, some credits that they might get that will help them have the kind of talent and skills needed if they were to show up to a job here, and ends up with post-secondary credits that a student can take on to a higher education degree or certificate. So it's a meaningful experience where a student gets paid, gets credits, and could show up to a job and get an entry-level job. It's endorsed by employers. So that means that an employer says, if a student goes through this, they would be competitive for me to hire. If you're interested in and have thought about doing any of these types of programs, meaning that you'd love to have students come and walk through your work site, or you'd like to participate in a career fair, or you'd like to connect with a classroom, get in touch with some science teachers or some math teachers or some computer science programming classes, or if you'd like to offer some paid work experience and kind of a direct pipeline to your employment opportunities through a career launch, connect with Angie, and she will help you figure out how to set up a program like that. You'll hear some stories later on the panel and later throughout the day of the kinds of things that local higher education institutions and colleges are doing to set these up with K-12 schools and then with employers. So you'll get a flavor of the kinds of things that you can get involved with or scale at your business. So this is what I was explaining with Career Launch. This is what it looks like. These are the components. Career Launch has a meaningful, high quality on-the-job experience that's paid at a work site. It has aligned classroom learning that a business says is helpful to them and that they would endorse in terms of the kind of curriculum that a student needs to show up with the kind of worksite talent to be able to be hired. And the business says that they would be a competitive candidate for hire, and they would get credits towards a credential. These career launch programs can happen in a K-12 setting, or they can happen in a community college or four-year setting, or they can happen in an apprenticeship setting. And again, you'll hear more from some of the colleges in the area and higher ed programs. And so if you don't already have a connection with your local K-12 folks and with the higher education institutions that can provide you basically direct pipeline for your talent, I highly encourage you to listen today and figure out how you might be able to strengthen those partnerships or add to those partnerships that you might already have. Oops. Ultimately, what we're trying to do through this CareerConnect Washington initiative is ensure that we have 60% of students have one of those career launch type experiences. We are doing that because we know that many learners, many folks need to have a hands-on experience to see themselves in the workforce. And if they can get paid while doing it, they're much more likely to stick around and are much more likely to actually end up in the job later. And we also are gearing towards 100% participation in some sort of career explore and career prep activity. You'd be surprised that not all students do get to explore careers when they're in middle school or late elementary school. And many of them don't get to have a hands-on experience in terms of something that would lead to especially a family wage job. We know that many students get summer jobs, but they might not be in something that requires high talent. And they might not be in something that is for a family sustaining wage job. They might be in sort of temporary type jobs that are necessary to the economy, but not sufficient for family sustaining wages. One example I'd love to highlight that we just talked about at one of our CareerConnect Washington events earlier this week is in South Central Washington. They looked around and looked at the data, similar to the data that we looked at today, and realized that they had a number of businesses that required talent in things like advanced manufacturing, automotive, and IT, as well as industrial maintenance. Much of this had to do with the kinds of jobs that are required in agriculture because of South Central Washington's high number of jobs in that industry, but not all of them. And so they worked with businesses. They originally had 3 students in 3 internships that were paid for 8 weeks over the summer. And that was started about 2 years ago. And then now they have progressed to dozens and dozens of students each year, not just in summer internships, but in different internships throughout the year. They are connected to directly the curriculum of 13 school districts, and they have a direct pipeline of talent into their workforce from those school districts. These opportunities are not just made available to students who are in high school. They are also made available to those who want to retrain and reskill, to the point made in the chat about workers that are older. But I will say that the CareerConnect Washington work that I'm talking about today is definitely focused on the younger folks. And the reason it's focused on younger folks is because we have the goal of ensuring that the high school class of 2030 has credentials by the time they turn 29, which is in 2042. That's not to say that we don't have a plan or don't need to have a plan for older workers, but we're sort of splitting our plans between, let's make sure that we have a lot of folks focused on incoming and upcoming workers for the next 10 years who are younger. And we're working really closely with workforce development councils and folks like EASC to talk about worker retraining programs and those kinds of things. So again, what's great about many of the programs that are being created is they're not only for that young talent, but there is a lot of investment put into that young talent because it's just such a much bigger pool. And if we don't now, we're going to be hurting even worse later on down the road. So as you're listening today, I want to make sure that you lean in to the kinds of ways that you can get involved. Make sure you listen for the experiences and that you might be able to provide, especially paid experiences to support students' exploration of careers. And that could mean older students and it could mean younger students. We're not talking about just any age group. Make sure you take time to understand and get involved in the pathways that are available at local K-12 schools. And if there aren't pathways available, ask why and maybe help be a part of building them. Angie and Sinead are here to help connect you, to make sure that if you have an idea, they'll say, we have a school district for you. We have a community college for you that has been totally looking to build a pathway like that. They know exactly where to plug you in. So don't hesitate to reach out and make sure that they know that you're interested and ready. And listen for how you can be engaged in these local efforts. You might hear somebody talk today that says something about a tech pathway or an industry pathway, and you say, I didn't even realize that I could connect with that person. Send them a chat, make sure you use the chat function, look them up, and lean into that kind of partnership. It'll do you and your business well 10, 20 years down the road. It might feel like a really hard investment now to have 1 or 2 paid internships or to do a site tour, but it will pay off in dividends later. Thanks for your time. I think we have about 4 more minutes if there are any lingering questions before I pass it off and we head to our panel speakers.
Thank you so much, Janae. There are a few questions in the chat. You actually scooped up many of them. One question that came up, there were a few people asking what family living wage or family sustaining wage is defined as in terms of family, and then also the amount in Snohomish County and maybe the state average.
Sure. Let me go back a few slides to that. So we use a combination of the MIT living wage calculator and the University of Washington's living wage calculator. And those provide us with information for an individual, which would be living wage for an adult to have housing, transportation, and not be on government subsidies. We also use family sustaining wage as 2 adults in a household, one working at least 1 full-time job and the other working at least 1 half-time job, and being able to take care of 2 dependents. And the 2 dependents would be of school age or younger. And that is the time in life where things are generally most expensive because of childcare and the other things that are required to have children. It could also include taking care of like adults or live-in relatives or others that are dependent. So it's not just sort of the like more nuclear family unit type way of thinking about dependence. And in Snohomish, if you don't mind, I'll switch my screens. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. And I'll switch over to our tool, and you can see exactly what those wages are and what they require on our labor market data tool. Snohomish's is not much lower, but it's a little bit lower than King County's, and it's a little bit above average for the state. Actually, I think quite a bit more above average than the state, but it's less than King County, which is why it's the hot place to move to and live, of course, and have a great job and have beautiful views. So when you hop over to that tool, which I'll share right here, this is what it looks like. You can play around with the number of adults. You can play around with the number of kids. And then up here, as you play around with this self-sufficiency wage for and the family size, you can change it to the region that you want to look at, and it'll adjust this bar. And the minimum is what would be required if you had 1 adult and 2 kids. We can change it to 2 adults and 2 children, which of course the adults need to be making a lot less, but if you only have 1 adult, it would be closer to 76,000 in Snohomish. So it depends on if you have a one adult income or 2 adult income. So the short answer is it's dynamic. It's based on the MIT calculator and the UW living and family wage calculator combined. Then you can also, like I said, you can compare it to Washington State. It's a little bit above average of Washington State. So you can see that Washington State's average is 40,000 if you have 2 working adults. It's 45 if you're living in Snohomish.
Awesome.
Hope that's helpful.
Thank you for sharing that tool. I have a feeling a few people in this event are going to play around with that. So I'm sure we'll get questions. Thank you for sharing and teaching us how to use it. I see one other comment in here, an interesting point by Doug Evans. For attracting all these, 75% of our workforce, what does that do to our housing supply? Great point. It keeps builders and municipality is pretty busy, that's for sure. and we just get more dense. So the sad thing in that is that our own children, our own community isn't getting the opportunity to thrive and create and innovate here in our own, at home. So thank you for the comment. There was one other question. Ava asked, she was asking, and Janae, you kind of touched on this about workers who are out of school and upskilling. And I would just say to echo your comment on programs that support youth and adults. Workforce Snohomish does great work in this space, and I'm going to use the Marysville Regional Apprenticeship Program as an example. There's actually a couple people in breakouts who are business owners and have programs that do exactly this. So it's a side-by-side model for youth and adults upskilling. So, and to Janae's point, our work here is to help students. It's a little bit longer game to build a pipeline to help students understand the opportunity, inspire them to step into programs and learn about their interests and skills and aptitudes. I don't see, yep, wonderful. Janae, thank you so much for being with us today. And gosh, all the work you do with us here at Snohomish STEM and across the state. You've been a great resource to us and always available to support in equity work as well. The information you shared is certainly going to fuel a robust conversation with our higher ed partners in the discussion panel to follow. So thank you for being with us. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to move on with your day. Thank you again. So now we're going to dive into a panel discussion, talent shaping our workforce to understand the resiliency of our higher education systems in meeting future talent need. Through strategic engagement, our local industry and businesses, we inform, we implement, and we produce talent development pathways and programs that are really valuable and industry recognized. This fuels the talent demand referenced by Dr. Myers Twitchell. So I'm excited to introduce to you many of our local higher education partners and leaders on our panel today. Let's see, we have 45 minutes. So we're gonna go 9:15 to 9:55, and then we're gonna take a break. I wanted to give you a heads up if anybody's feeling squirmy and needing to move, we're gonna take a break. So first, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Amit Singh from Edmonds College. He's the president there. Dr. Daria Willis, Everett Community College president. Dr. Paul Petrie, Washington State University of Everett chancellor. And James McCafferty, Western Washington University, is the director of Western Center for Economic and Business Research. If I could ask each of you to introduce yourself, just take a minute and share something you'd like us to remember about you and your organization today. Dr. Willis, or I'm not seeing, gosh, usually I see spotlights. I'm not sure, my settings might be different.
I'm here.
Oh, you are, great. Could I have you go first, please?
Sure. Good. Y'all have to forgive me. I'm on the East Coast today, so it's afternoon, and I got to remember to say good morning, because I almost said good afternoon, but good morning. I'm Daria Willis, the president at Everett Community College. We serve over 18,000 students in the region. And a good thing to remember about us is that we are still standing, yay, after the pandemic, or still even during it. But more importantly, we have just broken ground on our new Learning Resource Center project that we are really excited about. We broke ground in September, and we hope to open it within the next 18 months. So we're excited because it's got some really good things for our student parents and for other populations of students that need access to our digital resources. So it'll be a state-of-the-art center, and we're just really excited to have the approval from the state legislature to get that going. So thank you all so much for your time and attention this morning.
It's exciting news. Thank you for being here with us. Dr. Singh?
Yeah, good morning. Good to see all of you. Amit Singh, president of Edmonds College for last about three and a quarter. I moved here from Ohio in June of 18. So Edmonds College, we have a comprehensive offering from all the way pre-college to baccalaureate. Pre-college, we have pretty robust offering, GED, high school diploma, ESL programs. So now we have 5 baccalaureate programs, 2 already we offering, 3 in the already approved, but we're waiting to offer them in a year or so. So that's Edmonds College. Looking forward to having more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Dr. Petrie?
Yes, good morning. Paul Petrie, Chancellor of WSU Everett. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Washington State University Everett is the newest campus within the WSU system, the 6th campus system. And so a real unique model, or an access model, in that we're bringing WSU education to the community. We're an affordability model in that we only offer the upper division. So we really rely on our community college partners to prepare the students in the first years, and then they transition to WSU Everett and our partner institutions. We also have Western Washington University here. Eastern Washington University has a graduate program here. We also have the nursing program for University of Washington Bothell right here in Everett. And so we're just working on growing. We are considered a STEM campus because we have quite a few engineering programs, data analytics. We also have sustainable agriculture, but we're also growing in the area of business with hospitality business management and our general BA degree. And we can't forget the Murrow College of Communication. We have a degree from them here as well. So it's us.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you want to share something else?
No, that's fine.
Great. Thank you so much. James McCafferty.
Yes, good morning. It's so I'm thankful for you guys having this event today and being able to chat with you guys all about these different topics. This is important stuff. The great things about universities and colleges, there's always a ton going on, and it's, asking a few things is tough. But we opened a new residence hall this fall, which is really cool. We've got a ton of students on campus again, which is always a great thing to do. Our first year student cohort is actually one of the largest coming into Western. We're back to close to where we were pre-pandemic total population wise. Our graduate programs are larger than they were pre-pandemic. So Western is really rolling in its programs and looking for innovative ways to deliver on those programs, such places as Everett. So there's a lot going on, and we have some really cool buildings coming online. And this last week, we signed the Okanagan Charter, really focusing on a healthy community and healthy activities on campus. So there's a lot to that unpack. So I won't do it justice here, but very cool things going on at Western.
Well, James, you might have an opportunity with some of the questions we're asking. So we'll look forward to hearing about it. Thank you so much. So we just have a series of questions. Certainly want to provide all of you the opportunity to share what's happening, connect into community, from business to community-based organizations. But I want to encourage you, as it feels right, to maybe have a conversation. It's okay to jump over and communicate with each other. It doesn't need to be so structured. The first question I wanted to start the conversation with, we're having to do everything different, like all of us. So question for you, how did this year change your innovative culture at your educational institution? What happened? What did you do with it? Dr. Singh, I'm going to go with you first.
Thank you, Angie, for putting me in the spot first. No problem. So, we have been focused on innovation for quite some time, for a long time, actually. What this did was they reinforced the idea that how important it is to stay agile and be innovative all the time, and nimble and listening to the stakeholders' need. It also speed up the process for technology adoption. We did something, all of us, in fact, all my colleagues, they can tell the same thing, that what we could have done in 4 or 5 years, we did in a month or two. And faculty, staff, we all adopted a new technology of whether this is Zoom or how to teach classes online. So those were really put us 4 or 5 years ahead of a schedule in a way. But also, we know that innovation comes mostly from the frontline people, not from top and so forth. And it's not happens overnight. So we encourage people, everyone to think about doing things differently, be more creative, how we can keep serving our students. And we all kept serving, no matter how difficult the time was, we just kept moving. We found a way to how we can serve them in the classroom and outside the classroom. That never stopped. So that's and that's because of everyone, all employees, all faculty, staff, not just few people trying to think about innovation. And we established on our campus, in fact, before COVID, something called Idea Lab. And the Idea Lab is like a cohort program for 12, 15 months that people apply, and then they go through the program like a cohort. And we talk about how to think like a futurist, how to watch for market signal. So we were kind of ready for those kind of things. It's just that when COVID happened, we were able to then adopt more quickly. So, all right, thank you, Angie.
So a catalyst, so to speak,
Yes.
this pandemic. Dr. Petrie.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. So in terms of innovation, we really think of innovation as one of our core values. And so one of the things I talk about a lot is we want to bring the best and most innovative programs that WSU has to offer to this community. So that's at the core of what we do. But just thinking back on, especially like 2020, it was a challenge for us to work through the pandemic and how we would deliver our programs. I just remember I think it was like May of 2020, meeting with our faculty to discuss what it was going to look like for fall. Very important for us because we're pretty much the first ones out of the blocks in terms of starting, because we started in August of each academic year. And I remember saying to faculty, okay, be prepared for a hybrid approach, a little bit online, a little bit face-to-face, but we may have to go 100% online. But at the same time, we're hoping that we can be 100% face-to-face. And, we just have a great faculty, and they just said, yes, yes, yes. And so they just kind of prepared themselves. Turned out that we had to be 100% online. And I just noticed that there was a transition from, how are we going to do this and what's the expectation, to really talking about the types of tools that they were using, kind of sharing information on how they were approaching the development of their courses online. And so there's a real shift that our faculty members make. Fast forward to 2021, we're about 90% back fully face-to-face. But one of the really important things is that we were able to learn a lot from having to be 100% online. And so some of the tools that we utilized when we were 100% online, we're still incorporating to how we deliver coursework today. And a lot of it is to the benefit of our student population. The other one bragging point I have to throw out there, we have a software engineering student group that in 2019, they did their first hackathon, excellent, like 36 hours, drinking Monster and the whole bit, and really successful. And then in 2020, they still wanted to do it. And so they did a hackathon 100% online. And I attended quite a few of their events, and it was just excellent. And so I'm just so proud of them in how they adjusted within that environment. And in fact, we even have a startup business that came out of that hackathon. So the innovation economy the innovation pieces at WSU Everett are still in place.
Sounds like there's great momentum there. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Willis.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to take a slightly different approach to answering this question, because when I think about innovation, I think, most higher ed institutions, we like to think that we're highly innovative and that we were doing that stuff pre-pandemic into now. And I think in many aspects, we definitely were. But I remember some conversations that I had with some faculty pre-pandemic on this idea or concept of let's just offer more online classes. And I would have some of our science and our math faculty in particularly who would say, oh my God, no, you can never teach this class online. And they gave me all of the reasons under the sun why that wasn't possible. I even got reasons such as, those students are, they don't know how to work our laptops or cell phones, or whatever the case may be. But this weird thing happened in March and April of 2020 that literally shut the world down. And this thing called COVID-19 came. And so when that thing came out of the sky and dropped down on us, all of a sudden, the same faculty that said, oh, we could never teach these classes in a completely online environment, they were the first ones calling my phone and saying, you've got to close down and we can make sure that we move everything online. And I'm saying that jokingly, but it seriously happened. And so when I think about innovation and just the pandemic, a lot of times and I know we've all lost loved ones, and we've hurt throughout this entire process, but we did gain something in higher education because it forced us to think outside of the box and to move a little bit quicker. And now, especially at EVCC, now that we are, building our strategic plan, we're nearly finished and we'll have it in front of our Board of Trustees in December. People looked at me and said, well, why are we doing this during a pandemic? Well, it's the perfect time to start thinking about who we want to be during a crisis over the next 5 years. And we're building that sense of survival and supports as we move through this pandemic. When I also think about innovation, some of the things that we've learned that we are now doing are just better ways to support our students. So before, EVCC was largely a physical one-to-one type of a campus where, and I know that I'm talking to myself here, so maybe WSU and Edmonds and y'all did things differently, but I just remember that during, registration and enrollment times, there were lines outside of the doors for students to wait on advisors or to wait on cashiers to pay for things. But what we've been able to do is to flip that model, and now we have 100% student support services online. I just got out of a meeting where we were talking about creating one-to-one programs, because the one thing that a lot of community colleges and higher ed institutions did during the pandemic is that we waved the shiny new thing, these Chromebooks, and said, look how many Chromebooks we gave out to our students with our CARES and ARC funds. But in my opinion, that was problematic. It's as if we did not know that our students didn't have access to electronic devices and the digital divide through the pandemic. And so then when the pandemic comes, yes, we were able to push those things out to our students, but now at EVCC, we are actually looking at what's the world going to look like, and do we really need these computer labs? What if we put a Chromebook or a laptop in every student's hand? It's part of their program. And then we have some sort of a center that's set up to help troubleshoot if you have an issue with your device. We have students that are trained in this area. And so we want to put the technology directly into their hands so it can be a good investment for them, not even when they're at our institution, but as they move a bit further to our partners or they go out into the workforce. And so we're really trying to think about how we can remain innovative, but giving more structure and flexibility to our students, where you don't have to come to the college now to talk to an advisor. You can do it online. We can create a one-stop shop in an online capacity, or we can give you a Chromebook and it's yours, and you don't have to worry about having to make the trek down I-5 to sit into somebody's computer lab. We're going to build those, and I'm not a techie person, so I'm just going to butcher the name of it, but we're going to build those internet cafes on campus to where students can bring their tools and devices, and boom, that they sit in there in this cafe and like gig out on whatever is in there in that space. I just say yes to the stuff and they come up with those ideas, and then we also heard from our children and families, our students who are parents, because what they said, and many of I see a mother here with her baby that's rocking. I love you 100% for that, because we had students that were doing the same things during the pandemic. And I had a toddler at home. So when I was in meetings, I had a kid running across the screen half of the time. But we heard that it was that much more difficult for me to make it. So now that I'm coming back to the institution, childcare centers weren't the way that they were before. So we're looking at creating family-friendly classes that will be on our schedules. We're going to outfit different classrooms that will have some flexible options to maybe you need to bring your kid to class. Here's a quiet place for them to read or to play or to whatever while you're sitting in your class and studying. So we're thinking outside of the box. We are trying to be as innovative and creative as possible, but more towards how can we support our students, because it only takes one thing or one issue or for one emergency to happen for a student to completely drop out and we never see them again. And so we want to make sure that we have the supports set up in a way that can keep them moving forward so that they can realize their dreams.
Thank you, Dr. Willis. And I just want to echo what you shared there. I mean, much of what you described speaks to removing barriers and making education more accessible. And I see all of you in this panel doing that in many ways in our community for all kinds of students in our region. So thank you for the hard work. And the truth is what you described is the workplace today. Like the way you're learning is what our students will need in just a few years. So kudos to all of you for turning everyone on their heads and doing it a different way. James, last but not least, I can't wait to hear about how this year has changed your innovative culture.
You know, I could say yes and take the easy answer, right? Because the three people before, all of the above, right? But I want to echo a couple of things that are really important to understand. And we've experienced this in the workplace. It's the speed. The speed setting and things. Institutions do not move quickly by design and for a lot of really good reasons. Things take time to develop and to make sure that things are going to work well. And the speed at which our faculty and our staff have redesigned and redeveloped and recreated and reinvented, sometimes 2 and 3 and 4 times to meet the needs of students has been amazing in those learning outcomes. So asking them to do this and keep doing this, and I'll highlight the staff because, you know, the faculty, I think, you know, it's really easy to think about what faculty have to go through to reinvent how they teach. Staff have completely redeveloped in a lot of cases how they're doing this. You know, it's how do students access staff? Can they go online and make an appointment to a Zoom meeting? How can they access that kind of stuff? We've seen a lot of creativity and a lot of innovation around that. Western, just prior to the emergence of COVID, had gone through a credentialing program, and we became credentialed as an innovation and economic prosperity university, joining, you know, about 70 other universities around the country, WSU being our only other partner in the state with this credential. And so we had already started this really strong internal conversation about innovation and how do we infuse more innovation into our culture, into our community as a campus, and how do we engage people outside the university around that. And so as we've emerged from COVID, we're seeing a lot of new creative ways to help students, especially those first and second year students, become more innovative in their thinking outside the classroom. And so creating maker spaces would be the trendy word to use, but creating those spaces where they can learn how to do things and be able to adapt that entrepreneurial kind of way of doing that. We've seen an unprecedented amount of research coming into the university and being worked on by experts within the university. We have a team that worked with the Mars rover, which is fun. So that was pre-COVID, coming into COVID, but they continued that research through COVID, launching webinar series to let the world know how all that stuff was working and seeing a lot of people into those kinds of things. And that's been a big piece of our innovation culture as well, as we've launched a ton of webinar series. I think we have 2 or 3 different webinars a week coming out of Western at this point on topics from throughout the university, helping people understand and access information in a way that has not been easy to do. And that's one of those things that's great about Zoom, honestly. The other piece that I want to highlight is really what's, and it was touched on a little bit here, is understanding people are coming from different places. We've humanized this in a lot of ways. You know, we're understanding people's barriers and understanding challenges to people, and we wrap that in different ways, right? We think about ADEI type initiatives. We think about identifying barriers and breaking them down for students and for faculty and for staff, and looking at that very holistically and understanding how to engage on those topics. And so those are all things that I'm excited to see as we continue to emerge, because that speed factor, I think, is going to continue. I think we're going to continue at this really fast pace for years because we've gotten used to it in a lot of ways. I think we're going to continue to develop and create.
So one question that we had for you was, you all shared a lot of new offerings you have. How do you determine that need and where you find the gaps? And we've just observed as partners in this work that you are all engaging students and parents of students to help better understand who's getting access. And I'm going to say being served, but really it's like inspired, connected, thriving, and who's not and why. So we just commend you and support you in that work. It's not easy work, but you're all reflecting that you're willing to change and excited to be community partners in this. So on that front, a lot of change has happened. Mindsets changed. How are you currently attracting and retaining that talent in our region? Like, how do you keep them in? So there's a lot of statistics that show first year, second year maybe go okay, but that final stretch is difficult for some students because life happens. How are we supporting Dr. I called on you first last time. Dr. Petrie, it's you.
Yeah, well, retaining students, it's a challenge, at this time, because there's just a lot of things pulling at students. Some of the things that we're working on, Daria mentioned, the fact that, one emergency could really send a person's world into a spin. And we're keenly aware of that. So, one of the things that we worked on during the pandemic was an emergency fund for our student population. So we're trying to do those types of things so that if a student has a need for rent or if their car breaks down, I mean, these are, to people who, are older, like me, it wouldn't put me into a spin, but for our student population, it can be a tough thing. So we're trying to do that. We have our food pantry, those types of things that are able to help students to weather these, storms that they run into. The other thing that has been really important for us, one of the things that we saw this past fall, and one of my worst nightmares realized is that, some of our continuing students did not come back. And, when you have 40% of your students who are first generation, that is your fear that they may begin to look at higher education as maybe not being my path, or maybe this isn't a good bet for me, that type of thing. When we know that, and our presenter earlier just showed the opportunities that come with being able to complete the baccalaureate degree. So that's something that we've really been focusing on, is how we can help some of our students who have decided that maybe I'll take some time off, which we know could be a spiral away from higher education, how we can find some funding, find some supports that can help them to then continue through and to complete their degree program. The other thing that we know, and you're kind of alluding to this, Angie, is that, some students get within, less than 10 credits to graduation, and they're not able to complete. So we are working on identifying funding to help those students to be able to get through to that end, because we know that can be life-changing for them. And so that's really where we're focused.
I just learned about a program called Mentors in Tech that you just partnered with.
Yes.
Bridging that last final year. So mentors to help bridge into the workforce. A great example of
Yeah, that's one that we just started, and we, as things go on, we will expand that, where students are able to both get an internship and a mentor. This one's focused on software engineering, but we want to expand that as well.
It's wonderful. Dr. Willis.
So I'm going to take a different route with this question because I'm thinking about how we, not only our students, because I think I alluded to that a bit in some of our student support services that I mentioned in my previous answer, but really we have to look at our talent base and our employees at the institution and how are we getting new people in and keeping them here. And one of the advantages that I think that we have in Washington State is our focus on equity and inclusion and making sure that we're diversifying our workforce, because that's another way that we're able to not only make sure our students are successful, because they can hopefully see themselves in a classroom and then they can see themselves just in the individuals that are tasked to work with those students. But, I was a person pre-pandemic who believed that work meant that I got in my car every day and I fought traffic and I got to the campus and I stayed on campus 9, 10, 11 hours. And I believe that everybody needs to be in their physical space doing that work. And then we learned that actually you can do work in fuzzy socks, a nice shirt on top, and whatever you had on in the bottom, right? Pajama pants or whatever worked for you. And now that we are trying to transition into a way where there's some sort of a hybrid way to look at this, we have to really look at work-life balance. And I think we're looking at that, or the business and industry world is as well, because what is it, Amazon or one of those big Google companies or something is saying that their employees can continue to work from home. Now, everybody doesn't have that type of luxury, especially in a higher ed environment or even in our K-12 schools, but we do have to make sure that we have some sort of a hybrid setup to where people aren't expected to work 40 hours a week physically in a building, or whether it's a hybrid environment working that type of time. Another thing that we've learned is that, everybody is replaceable. So we have to make sure that our employees know that, yep, while everybody is replaceable, we need to make sure that that you are valued here while you are at our institution. So providing different levels of mental health resources, just quality of life and time off, and those types of techniques. We're working with our HR department and even consulting with some industry leaders around us on what are you doing in the workplace? How can we, shift that over to what we're doing in higher ed? Because, or else, and what we're seeing is that it's getting much more difficult to hire folks. Folks aren't willing to come in and do what they did before the pandemic. So we've learned that it's really not worth going through the blood, sweat, and tears for a job or an institution or anything that's not giving that level back to you. So we are shifting a lot of our HR policies. We're looking at more telecommuting arrangements. We are looking at more support services as far as counseling and things of that nature for our employees. And I'm saying even outside of the usual, EAP situation where you just call this hotline number and you get this person and you can talk to them about whatever. But we want to have more personable and personalized services for our employees, or else we'll lose them. And then we get into those higheredjobs.com and we can't find qualified people who could do the work to keep our students moving.
Thank you, Dr. Willis. James.
I guess I want to start by saying there's positive and negative reasons why someone will stay or choose to leave, right? I mean, the negative, of course, is I've got money challenges. I have food security problems. I have issues, right? And I think all of us have a very large, robust suite of programs that we have and we're continuing to enhance to help resolve some of those issues as the negative consequences. But we are also losing students towards the end of their degrees because industry is stealing them. It's really hard for someone who's like a quarter or two short of a degree and being offered a 6-figure salary, right? Can you start next week? That's a tough, I mean, that's, and we can talk all day about career trajectories and things like that to students. But when they're looking at a job offer on the table, that could be a hard sell sometimes. And so there's positive and negatives. And so we do research. We ask students that don't re-enroll as expected. We do follow up and we look for trends and patterns and look for things that we might be able to do. But I think we've also, how we're retaining is making sure campus reflects a very diverse community and society, right? So we want to make sure faculty and staff look just like our students. We want to make sure that, you know, the artwork on the walls and the buildings names and things reflect a community and culture where people want to be. And that's part of just making sure, again, people feel welcome and feel like this is their space. And so those are important aspects that I want to add to the already good pile that we have going here.
Thank you, James. I know my next question, but first, Dr. Singh.
Yeah, thank you. So my colleagues answered the question very well. I just want to add, in terms of students, we're facing similar challenges and we serve more or less similar kind of population. So we all have doing something similar. I would just say that we're thinking about 4 different things that we have to think about for students, their challenges in the area of academic, financial, personal, and professional. And academic, both inside the classroom, outside the classroom, and financial, of course, personal, so many issues they're facing, including mental health challenges and so forth, and then professional. You're ready to apply for a job, your resume, interview skill, and all of that is important. Do you have a mentor, and can we connect with you, somebody, and so forth? And in many ways, we have to act as a social service agency. We cannot just worry about academics and forget everything else. So we have to, all the wraparound services that you can offer, we need to offer. Think about the homelessness. We did a comprehensive survey in Washington, and many of the schools did participate in our CTC system 2 years ago from a Hope Institute out of Pennsylvania, Temple U. And what we found was just shocked us. We thought, okay, we'll have some food insecurity, we'll have some homelessness, but this is for Edmonds campus. We found that 39% of our students have food insecurity, 39%. 18% were homeless. Another 20% has home insecurity. So about 60% were facing one of those big challenges. And then when you have those kind of things, how can they focus on the study and so forth? So we have to expand those services, and we're working, it's not an easy solution. We're working on those. In terms of employees, I think Dr. Willis answered well already. Along the same line, I would say talent management. We thinking about that deeply, what that means for us. That means how we recruit, how we onboard them, continued training, and then growth opportunity and so forth. So those are important things for employees to keep and retain. And then they're looking for work-life balance. They're looking for some mission-driven work. And so you want to attract those people who believe in service, believe in our mission, and those who probably will stay, as opposed to just a quick job to make money and then move on. So those things we are thinking again more deeply and differently than we used to, and that's what we need to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. The statistics are sad to say, not shocking, but actually like that's home, like it's happening here. We hear the statistics in an article we read, but when you bring it home and you really think about what does that look like and what does that mean and who am I talking to that's in that situation, and I have no idea. So appreciate you sharing that information. We have just about 5 minutes. I have one last question. I want to give each of you an opportunity for closing comments. So that means about a minute per person. Business is center to all of us. Like, we're not here for any other reason to support our economy, strengthen community, and connect with each other. All of you of your organizations, your institutions have strong business relationships, but there's clearly need for business to engage in different ways as this all changes. So my question for you in closing is, what do you need from your business community here in Snohomish County and maybe the region to support the efforts, to support what you've described today? We haven't brought them into the fold, but here's your opportunity to just highlight how they can help. James.
All right. Well, first of all, I would say be a partner, right? Think about creating true partnerships with our institutions. Actively ask, in my case, ask if Western could add value to your business? Can we provide research? Can we provide experts? Can we provide educational type services for your employees and for your staff that are customized for your purposes? Or can we provide, all the way down to internships, right? Can we help you promote positions? We have our own job recruiting systems on campus. Are we posting your jobs? Are we helping you recruit? Are we doing those kinds of things? I'd also encourage you to ask what you could provide to Western. Could you provide speakers for classes, or being a mentor, or providing guidance to an advisory board? Can you do any of those things? Because that's how we make the decisions we try to do as an institution to know what businesses want, is by having businesses be involved. And so get involved. We'd love to have you, all of you.
Thank you, James. Dr. Willis?
Yeah, I'll say, bring us whatever problems that you're seeing in the workplace. A lot of times I hear from our business and industry leaders that this generation of folks don't do what they did in the past, and so forth and so on. But when you bring us those problems, bring us solutions as well to some of those issues, so that we can begin to use what your ideas are for the solutions to build it into our curriculum to get you the type of employees that you need to come back into the workforce.
Truly a partnership. Great point. Dr. Singh.
Yeah, similar answer. Please reach out to us. We are open for business. We'll love to work with you. And we may not have the solution answer for you, but together we'll find the answer, we'll find the solution. And that's important, the true partnership. So please reach out to us. We are here.
And Dr. Petrie.
Yeah, I just would like to see us be more tightly coupled with our business and industry folks. I'd like to see more folks, as James mentioned, more of business and industry folks in the classroom, sharing their experiences, sharing 21st century skills and what the needs are. I'd like to see our classes be taken to business and industry. I think the benefit of us being more tightly coupled is that we shorten the runway for our students to take off and be successful. And so with that information, with that experience, with that mentorship, I think that our students will be able to move into business and industry and immediately be successful. I think the added benefit of them getting to know you is that you will get some employees that will be with you for quite a while. And I think in this current environment, I think there's an opportunity to kind of get old school and really develop people that will be in your organization for years to come. Because I think people are really looking for things that are more solid in this particular environment, solid opportunities.
Well said. There's an element of developing culture in that work, and often with the STEM network, sometimes it's the first point of contact, and really we listen to try to understand how involved they want to be, so that we make a great match to begin with, and they come back asking for more, and we're like, go talk to them, like here's how it, and so to your point, that momentum builds. We're building community, we're connecting to the systems that that produce the talent in this region. So thank you all so much. We just really appreciate you taking the time and really being pretty transparent about what's happened in the last couple of years. It's not been easy, but there's a lot of light. So thank you for your time. And then we'd like to give everyone a 5-minute break. So get up and do what you got to do. Come back at 10:03, and then Gary is going to set us up for going into some breakout rooms to have real deep discussions on a lot of this conversation we've been having in a more presentation style format. So we'll see you in 5.
All right, folks, it is 10:03. Welcome back. I think we had some amazing information shared earlier, but now is time for us to dive into the breakout rooms. All right, so everyone, as you can see on the screen here, there's options and information to provide to you here. A few notes: the breakout rooms are self-selecting, so you have the choice to choose where you go. And as you can see at the very bottom of your screen, you see the breakout link as shown on our screen here to join the topic of interest for you. Additionally, you will have time to attend the 2 sessions at the end of the first session. So Economic Alliance Snohomish County staff will alert you to select your next session. So remember, at the end of the first session, you'll have another option. No need to leave your breakout room. Just click the breakout room and click to join again. So with that being said, folks, this is the listing of options, and we hope that you enjoy these breakout rooms. As you can see, hiring in 2022, attracting talent, how to retain talent, cultivating dynamic talent, resiliency toolkit, what Washington employers need to know, and last but not least, innovation mindset. So let's dive in, and your options should pop up on your screen. All right, folks, we are back. I want to thank everyone who took the time to join our great panels in our breakout rooms. And guess what? We have the amazing opportunity to go from great discussions about talent to a great introduction of an amazing person here in Snohomish County. This individual is not only on our board of trustees, but also leads the Workforce Snohomish efforts to come here today to address workforce shortage gap. And so that individual is Mrs. Joy Emery, Chief Executive Officer of Workforce Snohomish. Joy, please take it away.
Good almost afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and truly an excellent event. Angie and Gary and Katie and all those people that went in, put effort in organizing and volunteer to speak. I feel like I need to, I was trying to adapt my presentation as we went along in all these valuable discussions because things are changing. And I think the lessons that we're learning as we go along through the pandemic into the recovery and now in phase 2. So I'm going to go through some information that you have not heard today, which I'm thrilled that I'm not going to repeat all the great presentations that were today, present some new data that's hot off the press, and talk a little bit about what we're doing. And by we, it is a collective we, employers, organizations, agencies, governments, in response to some of the conditions on the ground and some of the issues facing our business community and our workers alike. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here, there we go. All right. So for those of you that don't know, I oversee Workforce Snohomish, which is a nonprofit corporation that oversees the public workforce development system in collaboration with the local workforce board, which is housed at the county. A lot of words there. Essentially, we oversee the one-stop system, so WorkSource. We also have a variety of other programs and services, all focused on retraining and reemployment. So that's why we're digging into this information, right? We have supply and demand, and the pandemic shook everything up and kind of spit it out. So let's see what happened as a result of kind of the past and present. And I'm going to start with a quote. I don't often do this, have people read during your presentation. I can advance my slides. Always has to be something, doesn't it? There we go. I saw this quote in the Atlantic a couple of weeks back, and I was like, oh, brilliant, right? If we could talk about what happened over the past year and how structurally our economy and our labor force was transformed. And I do mean that, it was transformed. So this kind of summed it up in a nutshell for me without representing the impact on people and businesses, right? So all of these factors came together and have really fundamentally changed our economy and our labor force. So let's kind of talk at a high level about those factors, not a comprehensive list, but otherwise you would be here for days. So obviously we know historical investment by the federal government in recovery and supporting households and businesses alike as doors were closed and businesses shuttered. Decrease in household spending. This is important. I know many of you have heard people aren't coming back to work because, right? So not only did we have a bump in federal funding for unemployment, pandemic response, people also spent less, right? They didn't spend on childcare or couldn't spend on childcare. Rental moratoriums, additional unemployment assistance, good practices in advance of the pandemic, et cetera, but overall decreased spending. Lower post-secondary enrollment. This is abnormal, atypical for a recessionary period. A national, state, and local reckoning on racism and structural inequities that continues into the present. Now we're seeing growth in employment opportunities, wages and cost of goods increasing, acceleration of retirement decisions, 7 million people exited the labor force in the past year, but the US population stopped growing 10 years ago. So while we know that workers are and will continue to return to the labor force, we're seeing that there is a positive increase in re-engagement, but labor shortages are predicted to persist. So let's talk a little bit about that labor force. So as many of you know, you might have seen the hot off the press unemployment rate in Snohomish County is 5.1%. That is representative. So when you hear unemployment rate, you have to think job seekers. These are people that are actively engaged in seeking work. That represents, see if I can remember, about 23,000 people in Snohomish County. And we're 5.1%. That's a lot of people compared to Ferry County over here, 5.7%, or even Grays Harbor County, which is historically high, but continues to persist. So we are still in the dark blue, meaning that we do have quite a few people still actively seeking work. So hot off the press, some new data that I will explain, and I have provided a link so that you can explore at your leisure. This will be an evolving data set, so bear with me. At the request of the local workforce boards, Employment Security Department has run some analysis on our unemployed population, right? Again, like as we heard from Kelly and Rachel, right? Staffing at an all-time high, staffing agencies are busy, employers are hiring, but who is constituting this labor force and how do we help this labor force re-engage with employment and meaningful employment? So we really needed to understand the who before we understood the what. So there's a link on here, but let me tell you what this looks like. And of course, my notes aren't showing up. So this top line, oh, this is where I feel like I need to now bring up the website. This top line right here is construction trades. Okay. We have a mix of folks. This is a bummer. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Oh, there it is. Okay, they did pop up. 1,600 construction trades, followed by other management occupations. Assemblers and production workers are next on the list here. And so while you'll see this line here, this all the way goes to the pandemic, construction trades peaked here. And now has declined. However, it still represents about 1,600 people unemployed in Snohomish County. Now, this is not a complete list. And I want to say that because there's some data quality issues with this. So a lot of folks don't have an occupation or industry sector tied to their unemployment claim. So we have about 600 plus individuals that are just blank. They're not represented in these analysis or are on the top here, this blue line. That's actually a fairly big number. So I encourage you to go to this dashboard. It's right here and take a look at, but we still have a lot of talent in the labor market. I want to go into a little bit deeper into the who. UI claimants by demographics. Now this is holistic to date because if you start adding it up, it doesn't total the current sum of unemployed workers. But as you'll see, we know that the pandemic highlighted disparities. Now, Snohomish County's labor force is largely Caucasian. Therefore, the vast majority of dislocations and UI claimants in 2020 and 2021 are Caucasian workers. However, there is a disproportionate impact on those persons of color in unemployment, both in the initial claims as well as in the recovery. And so we're seeing that manifest here. As the second largest population in Snohomish County, Asians are highly represented in UI claimants, followed by Black and African American Hispanic Latinx and Black and African American. This matters in our recovery and our resiliency in the future, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I also wanted to highlight this statistic. As we know historically, persons with disabilities are disproportionately dislocated in economic recessions, and they are also slower to recover their employment opportunities. This is a tremendous talent pool of individuals. We also have seen an uptick in ex-offenders, SNAP and TANF, which are food and basic living supports. Okay. So our unemployed populations is by and large talented, but also highly diverse. Okay. We've heard a lot about women exiting the workforce, and I have no doubt, as a mother of a 4-year-old, that is true. With the cost of childcare, families are making decisions about who goes back to work, about access to childcare and the cost of childcare just juxtaposed to wages. But we see about a 50-50 split in UI claimants. Now, these are all people that are actively looking for work. What I don't have the data for are those is the labor force participation rate by gender. Okay, that would give us a little more insight as to are men, or those that identify as men, returning to the labor force at a more rapid pace than women or not. Maybe James or some other folks can have the answer to that. But I also want to, I guess, caution against sweeping generalizations about the unemployed body, that men as well as women are making those decisions to either stay at home, care for family, elder care, child care, et cetera, and balancing the needs of their family. So this will be an interesting trend. National press has said women are not returning. I actually think that we need to look at families and the family dynamic in relation to that. Some more information needed on this. So here we are. We know that we still have large unemployment relatively in Snohomish County. We know that we have employers that are seeking talent, and I want to get into that a little bit more, but first I wanted to provide this information. There is a link to this information embedded in my PowerPoint. When I talk about engagement of diverse populations, I want to look at that by, yes, it's the right thing to do, but if we don't, in a meaningful way, there are economic consequences. There have been and there will be. One, because there aren't enough people. The math doesn't work out, right? We really need to look at the number of people in the domestic labor force, those that are skilled, and how we cultivate them into demand jobs. Otherwise, if we leave folks on the sidelines, right, there's a cost. There's a cost to Washington State in the amount of, under this simulation by the Federal Reserve Bank, $52 billion annually in GDP loss. So if we close the race and gender gap in Washington State around earnings, it would save us, it would generate $28 billion annually in revenue and $11 billion in employment. So again, there's a multitude of gaps that are represented in this simulation, including earnings, employment, education, attainment, et cetera. And there is a cost to not meaningfully engaging all of our residents, all of our population in the labor force. So I wanted to highlight that. It's a great simulation model. I encourage you to take a look at it. So I'm kind of bouncing around here, but I did want to talk about, since we're talking about business resiliency, and I feel like Kelly and Rachel represented this so well, and James in their discussion, so I appreciate that, and I'm going to reiterate some of their points maybe in a different way, is that I too run a small business. I too have been faced with challenges with recruiting, and fortunately not retention, but certainly with recruiting. And so I really want to make sure we're reminding ourselves, even though we know this, don't forget about your current workers, right? They have stayed with us. They have worked long hours, right? I don't know how many times at the beginning of the pandemic, folks were like, if you're working double time, triple time, right? You might be at home, you might be in the office, but the demands on your time have been extremely exacerbated, right? And what they say about your company and about you as a leader or manager matter, for good or for bad. So recent polls also, and I'll highlight this, and Kelly indicated leaders, I think they fall into this bucket, right? But managers, cited as the #1 reason for resignations, right? And so if we are not cultivating our supervisors, our managers, and our leadership teams and ourselves to do better, right? To bring in the human element to our work and to our management supervision of our employees, it is resulting in resignations. So retention is imperative in a tight labor market. Don't lose sight of that. And then the final point on that is upskill, backfill. Cultivate your people, right? They have a wealth of knowledge. And so as you identify opportunities to grow them and to bring on talent that might need some additional training and education, right? There's a process we call upskill and backfill, right? Cultivate your workers and backfill at the lower end so that you can then generate the skills and talent at the lower end. And I want to talk about that a little bit because there are resources to support you in doing that, particularly small and medium-sized businesses. So recruitment, Rachel Macklin has done some great posts over the last couple months and years on recruitment. And I have internalized those quite a bit. And so I want to relay some of that to all of you, even though I know she talked about it earlier, is review your job descriptions, right? We had the worst job descriptions going into the pandemic. They were like a prescription for task-oriented work. And we don't function like that as a company, right? And so shifting them to telling our story, the why behind our work, what opportunities we provide for creativity, innovation, and really shifting our focus on not just selling our company, selling the leadership, selling our managers, and selling the work and the impact that we do, right? Our corporate culture. Sharing employee stories. I've seen companies do this very, very well over the last 6 months. Your employees are your best kept secret in a lot of respects, but they can inspire others, right? People that look like them, that resonate with their story, their successes, their struggles, whatever that angle might be. I would really encourage you to consider your employees, your employee testimonials, a video, a story to be a tremendous asset in your recruitment. We've heard a lot about, it's not just about the money, perhaps. But with that said, thinking about your business impact, what do you volunteer? Do you support a league, sports teams? Do you do community service? Does the work you do impact our community, our state, our globe, right? Talk about that in your job descriptions. Also think differently about your ideal candidate. And I think we all need to kind of reset our worldview on this. I know I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go real quick. I'll need one last slide. Grow your own talent and seek support if you need to. We have resources within the public workforce development system to help you hire and train up talent. So think differently about your ideal candidate, what personality, as I've heard other speakers talk about, what core skills, what enthusiasm for the job, et cetera. And then think about how you can grow their talent and reach out to us if you need some support in that. We're happy to help. And lastly, just understand the challenges facing individuals and families. They are real, and they are diverse and they are multifaceted, but don't be dismissive of them. Workers will come back, they will re-engage, but there will be fewer of them. So it's time to innovate, reimagine, and recreate our sense of how we cultivate the workforce development system, how we support employers and workers alike in entering family-sustaining jobs. And I look forward to partnering with you, the STEM Network and Economic Alliance and the Future Workforce Alliance, all of which were mentioned today in the call, but know that we are working together in support of businesses and workers and students, and that we are here to help your business and help those that you are seeking to hire. So I'm going to close my PowerPoint early. There'll be a few more slides there available to you, and it's sent out, and I will go to the chat. Do we have anything in chat, Gary, that I need to stop sharing? There we go, chat.
Enjoy. I'm not seeing any
Okay.
questions in chat. I think people are
Great.
really thankful for your presentation.
Oh, I'm thankful for all of you. It's been a great discussion and dialogue today.
All right. Well, folks, with Joy closing off with a great presentation, we have just a few closing remarks I'd like to provide before we close out. And so first and foremost, I want to thank our sponsors. So first and foremost, we talk about how this has come together. As you can see, they're flowing through, but you can see Business Health Trust, you can see Community Transit as well. And last but not least, Edmonds College. I want to thank our sponsors for providing this opportunity for us to come here. Now, we do have a few upcoming events. Obviously, we are moving forward with our coffee chats. And so we will have our next upcoming one as the state of the station. And that'll be November 10th from 1:30 to 2:30. And that's going to provide a great opportunity for us to engage not only with our efforts there with the station, but also Commanding Officer Joshua Menzel will give that address. So again, 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. I want to thank Joy Emery. I want to thank also Snohomish STEM with that presentation, talking about the key points being what opportunities are out there. And they mentioned advanced manufacturing, construction trade, and also education roles that are permeating in our county, but also the connection between STEM and your business to make sure that that's happening and that we're engaged on that space. We also have had some conversation where Joy mentioned a little bit about how to retain talent. And that was one of the breakout sessions that we had. And so I want to thank our team who was put together in that space as well. So there's an opportunity for that. And then I'm seeing that we do have an additional update that I need to provide before you all take off. And that is that we will also have the State of the Schools Tuesday, November 9th at 8:30 a.m. And we'll have our superintendents with a panel to discuss those things. I have a few notes from what Joy actually mentioned, and she mentioned the 5.1% unemployment rate here in the county, but she also mentioned that we need to pay close attention to the demographics of those who are in need of jobs and opportunities. She also mentioned the impact of inclusion as we work to build up our businesses. Last but not least, I want to thank Katie Leone for her efforts here to bring us into this amazing space. She did an amazing job. And also our staff who supported that effort as well. Again, this is in partnership with Snohomish STEM. I want to thank SBTRC, PTAC, SBDC, Workforce Snohomish, and all of you who joined us. So thanks again, and I hope you have an amazing afternoon.